My own son convinced a judge I was mentally incompetent and stole $243,000 from me. What he didn't expect was the day I walked back into court. The day I walked back in. A story of betrayal, survival, and reclaiming what was stolen. The morning they found me sitting on the courthouse steps in my bathrobe, I hadn't slept in 4 days. That's where I'll start. Not with the war, everyone starts with the war. And frankly, I'm tired of that story being the first thing people reach for when they look at a man like me. 63 years old, 2 Purple Hearts, a Distinguished Service Medal, gathering dust in a shoebox under the bed I no longer owned. None of that mattered to the judge who signed the papers. None of it mattered to my son, Marcus, when he sat across from a VA caseworker and told her, in his careful, rehearsed voice, that his father could no longer make decisions for himself. His father, that's me, Earl Raymond Colton. I can name every man in my squad from 1983. I can rebuild a carburetor blindfolded. I can quote Psalms 23 from memory in English and in the broken French I picked up in Djibouti. But according to the documents Marcus filed, documents with my signature on them that I do not remember signing, I was incompetent, a ward of the state, a problem to be managed. He drained the accounts over 11 months. My pension, my disability compensation, the savings account I'd built dollar by dollar since I came home from my second deployment, $243,000. Gone to a boat I never saw, a timeshare in Cancun I was never invited to, and whatever else a man tells himself he deserves when he's decided his father has already lived long enough to matter. I didn't fight it at first. That's the part that shames me most. I'd had a rough winter, some memory lapses, a couple of incidents the neighbors called episodes, though I'd call them grief, plain and simple, because my wife Dottie had died in October and I was drinking more than I should have been. Marcus swooped in with his clipboard and his concern, and I let him. I thought that's what love looked like. I thought I was being taken care of. The morning I woke up and tried to use my debit card at the pharmacy for my blood pressure medication, nothing fancy, and it declined. I called Marcus. He didn't answer. I called 3 more times. On the 5th call, he picked up and told me, with the patience of a man explaining something to a child, that he was managing my finances now, and that I needed to submit requests for spending approval through the form he'd emailed me. I don't have a computer, Marcus. I know, Dad. We'll figure something out. That was the last real conversation we had. I showed up at his house 2 days later, and he'd installed a new lock. I spent 3 nights in my truck before a neighbor called the non-emergency police line, not to report me, but because she was worried. Officer Renata Dyers, I will say her name until I die, sat with me in the cab of my F-150 for 2 hours before she drove me to the VA crisis center herself. Not because I was dangerous, because she said every man deserves someone in his corner, and right now she was electing herself. The VA connected me to a veterans legal aid attorney named Priya Sharma, 29 years old, sharp as a tack, and madder on my behalf than I had the energy to be for myself. She filed to have the guardianship reviewed within the week. She found the inconsistencies in the paperwork, the signatures that didn't quite look like mine, the evaluation conducted by a doctor who had seen me for 11 minutes total, the conflict of interest nobody had bothered to disclose. It took 8 months. 8 months of sleeping on Renata's couch, then a transitional housing unit, then a 1-bedroom apartment the VA helped me secure. 8 months of depositions and document requests and sitting in rooms while people debated whether my mind was my own. 8 months of watching Marcus show up to hearings in a good suit, looking like a man who'd done nothing wrong, who'd only tried to help. The guardianship was terminated on a Tuesday in February. I remember it was cold, the kind of cold that settles into old injuries and reminds you they're still there. Judge Elaine Okafor read the ruling in a flat, legal voice, but she looked at me when she was done, really looked. Mr. Colton, she said, the court finds no basis for continued guardianship. You are restored to full legal capacity, effective immediately. I didn't cry. I'd used up my tears somewhere around month 4. I just nodded and said, yes, ma'am. Marcus is under criminal investigation now. I didn't file the complaint, Priya did, because financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult is a crime regardless of what the victim wants. I don't know what I want. Some days I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Some days I just want to understand how a boy I taught to ride a bike decided I was worth more empty than full. I'm back in my own apartment now. Different one, the house is gone, sold while I was classified as unable to consent to the sale. That's another legal matter, still pending. I have a caseworker named Jerome who checks in twice a week, not because I need supervision, but because he says consistent support is different from control, and he's right. I walk every morning, 2 miles, sometimes 3, past the courthouse where they found me in my bathrobe, past the pharmacy where my card was declined, past Renata's house where I leave tomatoes from my container garden on her porch because she won't accept money and tomatoes are the next best thing. People look at veterans and see a story that already happened, a sacrifice already made, a debt already logged. What they don't always see is that the man is still here, still thinking, still deciding, still capable of knowing on a cold Tuesday in February that justice, however slow and imperfect, is not nothing. I'm 63 years old. I have a small apartment, a legal battle, a caseworker named Jerome,